Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Dragged into Turbolasers, Episode 3 of Between the Bolter and Me podcast. I'm your host, Eric Wire, and tonight I'm joined with my brother, Adam Wire.
Hi, everyone.
And Brad Smith.
Hello.
And unfortunately, Greg's not going to be able to join us tonight, but hopefully he'll be here next time.
The truth is still out there.
It's true. X-Files is almost over. Almost over. We'll see if they record another season. But I guess we have a lot of stuff to talk about tonight, so I might as well jump right into it. So, like usual, we're going to start talking about the various releases, model releases, primarily through Games Workshop, but also a little bit for Forge World for January. And so I guess I'd like to start out by talking about the big kind of releases from Games Workshop, in that the Wulfen seem to be back. What do people think
from
about
the Eye
these
of
guys?
Terror? How many years has it been since they released the Eye of Terror Codex?
10,000 years?
It's been a while. Yeah.
That would be I think that was like early 2000, 2002 or something. 2003, 2004.
Like that. It was a while ago.
Yeah, so it's been a little while. And yeah, so they have a whole bunch of new models to replace those like metal ones, and I don't know if they're any better. I mean, they're
sculpted really well, I would say, and they're impressive looking. I like how they're actually, the scale of them, they're larger than their typical 40K scaled Space Marine. That's cool.
Yeah,
that is nice.
They're on 40mm bases, which is, I feel, kind of wild for...
And they don't fill them.
For powered armored Marines. I think that's...
What's even more wild is when they were in the warp, they were fighting Tau. They have Tau skulls all over the place. Or maybe there's probably only just one, but they were fighting the Tau in there.
There's the one on the Wolfpack leader, but
they're fighting everything, which is good.
Yeah, that's after they left, after they got out of the Eye of Terror.
So before we talk too much about the models, I heard rumor, I haven't read any of the new codex or supplemental material they released, which I'd like to pretty soon. But I heard rumor that when these Wulfen make it back to the Space Wolves and everything, they rummage around the throne room and stuff of the Space Wolves and find all the old, really large ornamental weapons that were decorating the Space Wolves Fortress Monastery, and they pick them up and start using them because they're sized just right for them.
I read that too. Pretty cool.
Yeah, I don't like the sound of that at all.
Yeah.
Oh, there's my good friend Face Spider. Let's take him off the wall and break some stuff.
Millennia. Yes, I don't like that. I don't like that at all.
No.
But I will say it's nice. It looks like with the sprues and such, all the different weapon options they have available, they actually have at least 5 different variants of all of them. So if you wanted to equip your dudes with storm shields and thunder hammers, they have enough that you could equip the whole squad with them.
They do ultimate war gear? That's impressive.
Yeah, no, I think they have... The only thing they don't give you 5 of is that stupid-looking grenade launcher thing over their shoulders. But I don't think you'd, at least rule-wise, you'd even want that many of them.
Yeah.
More than one or something, so...
I like their thunder hammers. Their thunder hammers look nice. They're not too overwrought. I mean, I feel they're probably too large to be used on anything else, which is a little unfortunate, but the look of them overall I like.
You wouldn't be tempted to use them for Space Wolf Terminators?
I think they're too big.
Yeah.
While that would be the obvious application you'd want them for.
Yeah.
What about just the halves to them?
I think they're too big.
Hmm.
Maybe not. I'd have to actually compare them to Terminators and stuff, but I would hazard a guess they're too big.
Yeah.
I I don't necessarily like the old models they had. They still largely had armor on their feet.
Yeah.
And I think they looked a lot better for that.
I like
and
that.
I feel it's
Now
sort of
it
weird.
looks
Like
like
it was,
they're wearing like hot pants or something.
Yeah.
yeah, I feel it was like an attempt. Like, I really want to make you know that these guys are different or something. So they gave them their little wolf feet.
Yeah.
Because
Rather than
people would have been I think people would have been really pleased if they had like armored greaves and stuff for their legs and everything, because
People
they
would
would be
love true
they'd be a
scale
great
version.
avenue to try and convert some true scale Marines. But now
Mhm.
with these models, like they're hardly even wearing armor at all. Like their bodies, it looks as if you just can see some of the black carapace underneath their armor, and that's like all there is.
Yeah. Well, they don't need it. They're so tough.
That's true. Well, that's how they get their 4+ save.
Is it a 4+ rather
It's
than
a
a
4+.
3?
I'm
Yeah.
pretty certain.
I
They're
guess
not
the
wearing
2
power
makes
armor.
feel no pain and whatever.
Probably the most exciting part I think about them are their backpacks. They actually have power packs, and they look like they're actually scaled. They're quite a bit larger than the standard plastic Space Marine backpack.
Yeah,
So
they are huge.
those I think will work very well for true scale Space Marine conversion.
Yeah, because I feel that's one thing that anyone who would tend to make their true scale Space Marines, the one thing they wouldn't do anything with were the backpacks, because it's like too much of a pain. So this, I feel, is a good opportunity to do that. So
I mean,
that's
you'll have to
exciting.
change the little wolf exhaust ports on them, but that's fine.
So what do people think about the Wolf Pack Leader, the one who's like
In the Karate Kid pose,
yeah, so when I had first saw that model, I thought it looked like he was like sort of leaping on to someone and about like ready to sort of grab him and slash him or whatever.
yeah,
But
that's not what he's doing.
he can't be, because if you look at it 360 sort of view, if you were doing that, he would almost, since he's not leaning forward at all, he looked like he was like falling backwards. So I guess he's like falling from a perch or like landing having pounced or something
Yeah,
with
it's
his
not exactly clear what he's
hands
doing.
up for some reason.
These guys don't pounce, Eric. They lope.
Yeah, well, so I don't know. I don't really think that's the coolest pose. But interestingly, I heard just watching some people do some unboxing things. It seems that this model in particular, this Wolfpack Leader, is designed such that the foot that's touching the ground, you can replace it with another foot such that he is leaning forward and like sort of running, so you don't have to make this like the Karate Kid pose. You can make a more like, I don't know, imposing sort of running pose that I think ultimately looks better. So that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not too thrilled with them, but I think they do have some nice components. But I think as you mentioned, Adam, the scale is a little too large. Like, it's all right for them, but I feel it might be harder than people are imagining to actually have these pieces work well with other things. But I guess that will remain to be seen.
One of the things that was interesting that I saw on like the YouTube community, there's a pretty big poster on there. His name's Templar Crusade. I guess Templar's Crusade 101, I believe. And he converted a whole squad of them, and he did a really nice job of assembling them. And he opted to kind of give them more of a feral look to them. And in doing that, he didn't attach any of their weapons. So they just have like their claws. So like he didn't attach those like weird lightning claw things. And like I think they looked really nice for it.
Yeah, I think they looked a lot. I saw them too. I think they look a lot better. And it's kind of nice that I guess with those claws or something, they actually gave you, or for whatever reason, they gave you some like bare, like claw hands to put on, which, yeah, I think they look better. And to be honest, that actually makes them look more like the old Eye of Terror Wulfen 2, that it's more like they don't need to have big axes and whatnot, or like Thunderhammer storm shields, that sort of thing. They just tear people apart with their massive biceps.
Yeah, so overall, I think like you could make something pretty neat out of them, like if you were willing to like do some work on them. Like overall, I like them. They're large shields. I feel you could use them in like a dreadnought conversion. Like you could give something one of those shields, and it might look kind of cool.
People are gonna use those for Space Wolf, Terminator, Thunderhammers, Storm Shield sort of things.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel they might be a little too large, but I guess I'd have to actually see.
Yeah, we'll see. Like, they certainly would have a potential of being good for it, but yeah, they might be a bit over.
So actually, you know what you could do? I think this would fit pretty well with Logan Grimnar. Is you could actually have them using those shields as kind of like sleds or like snowboards or something, and they could be like barreling down the slope along with him and his sled, and I think that'd work pretty well.
I thought you were going to tell him that you could have him run and pull in the chariot for him. That's where I thought you were going with that.
Well, that's true too, actually.
It would work. All right, well, we've belabored these particular Wulfen enough, but with the Curse of the Wulfen
new character models are being released.
Yeah, they released some character models. I don't know, which do we want to talk about first? Maybe the Iron Priest. So they finally redid the classic Jess Goodwin Iron Priest model, and in plastic now, and it's actually moved this character from an elite choice to an HQ choice. But yeah, so it's looking at the model, it's clearly they're kind of paying homage to that classic model.
Looks all right overall. I mean, there are a couple things that look a little wrong to me. Mainly focused around his legs. I feel his legs. It almost looks like the base of his legs where they attach to his waist. They just attach at the wrong spot. Or his waist is too long. It just looks really awkward to me.
Makes his shins look really short too.
Yeah. And I guess on top of that, he's so top heavy, it like accentuates that even more. So you realize like, oh man, like how are his scrawny legs going to hold up that backpack and that hammer and that Hellfrost pistol?
Yeah, the massive pistol.
I guess you might be able to put some like little servo harnesses or something to like help support all that bulk. Maybe you could do that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy they kept the helmet design. That's sort of classic.
It looks nice.
And
it doesn't just look like a wolf head. Yeah. It has it's stylized to sort of resemble one, but it isn't just outright.
Yeah, and it looks like, looking at the sprue itself, that's actually just a separate head too. So
yeah, no, that's nice.
And for
one thing I was hoping that they would have given you multiple options for his pistol, because I don't know, the Hellfrost pistol is probably not going to be game changing, and I feel most people would just want to equip him with like a bolt pistol or something. Yeah. But maybe he comes with the Hellfrost pistol.
I thought the Hellfrost was like Space Wolf's grav guns. Like,
if that's true, people probably want it then.
That's what I thought.
I think the Hellfrost weaponry are fairly good. I don't really know.
Yeah, we don't. Who knows?
I find it hard to believe that a pistol would be worth the 15 points or whatever. They're probably charging for it. Like, they're always sort of overpriced. But I don't know. Yeah, so I think the model's pretty nice, but at the end of the day,
it'll be good for conversions, making tech marine conversions and stuff. You can use a lot of the components.
I feel at the end of the day, if for an Iron Priest, I think I would rather just have the old Jess Goodwin model. It doesn't have those awkward proportions, doesn't have that huge Hellfrost thing. The hammer looks not as large and neater with the old hammer. I think kind of had a stylized wolf head sort of hammer thing, which
But
I
this
think
is
was
a Tempest hammer, Eric. This is a Tempest hammer.
Yeah, so he's fine.
He's good.
But
I like him overall.
Yeah.
$30 is kind of a lot for a model
It's
that
a
I
Space
don't
Marine
think
character. That's just what they are.
improves. Which I think that's actually cheaper than some Space Marine characters. I sort of thought some of them were 40. Maybe not, though. Oh, yeah, I think that new Blood Angels Librarian, or Blood Angels Chaplain model with the jump pack.
Wolf Lord Crom's available for everyone to buy now.
Yeah. Yeah, how could anyone think that would have been a limited edition model when GW released that box for the One Warzone campaign? What was it?
Stormclaw.
Oh, yeah, it was the Sanctus Reach campaign stuff.
The box, I think, was called Stormclaw.
Yeah, they had him.
Nice model, I'd say, overall.
Yeah,
I like
Stormclaw.
him.
I think the neatest thing to me is that it's clearly homage to that old, maybe third, fourth edition Space Wolf cover.
Yep. Oh, yeah, it is.
It really is, yeah.
In the snow, fighting the orcs.
Yeah, so it's clearly making that picture, and like overall, I think his face is good. His armor looks suitably bulky. I'm not that thrilled with his axe. Like,
it's pretty,
but
nice.
It's all right.
It's not as big as it could have been.
Yeah, I feel that's the sort of thing that the best you can hope for.
Yeah, overall, he's nice. It's nice. It's easier to get him if you'd want him.
Yeah, I think that's the best part. Like, you can finally get him without like going to eBay or buying that.
It's a really nice head too. I think people would be happy to get that head for conversions and stuff.
Yeah, so now I'm glad he's back. I guess then there's one more model, right?
Best for last.
Redesigned Ulrich the Slayer. And
he's nice looking.
Yeah, I feel he's the he was the most surprising thing to me, and actually somewhat of a re-imaging of the model, which I think is neat.
Did a really nice job overall, I think. My favorite part by far is his head. He has a really nice head.
Yeah, it looks a little different. It's not just... I mean, he certainly has a beard and a mustache or whatever, but it's not classic Space Wolf braids everywhere. Like, it's a little bit more
reserved.
He looks
stately.
And it's kind of cool that, like, he still has his classic wolf-like helmet thing, but you actually see his face now. But he isn't completely like, I don't wear a helmet because I am a Space Marine. He still has it there.
I feel like he's got a little too much bling going on.
Mm-hmm. I think that's right. Although, I guess admittedly, some of that's probably just accentuated by how he's painted.
Yeah.
Which they always do that. But I think you're still right. There's a little much there. Admittedly, I do kind of like the horn he has. I feel that's some extra detail that isn't always on Space Wolves. Like, it's not just like add 5 wolf tails, a bunch of claw teeth sort of stuff. Like, it's actually a different...
Gives them more of their Viking heritage as opposed to their wolf.
The model was painted very nicely too. And I love how on his belt, the little wings were painted yellow. That seems very so much screams to me like classic Space Marine,
like second edition, Space Wolf sort of models.
Yeah.
His Crozius is probably a little too big, but it looks nice.
Yeah, I was
might be a little too small.
Yeah, I was pretty excited to see the new artwork he got.
Yeah,
it's good.
I like that picture. Yeah,
It's actually from a Korean artist.
Yeah, he's really good. He's actually done a lot of artwork throughout more of the modern books, like
Some Age of Sigmar stuff, and at least the
Harlequin
Scutari.
Codex.
Yeah, and I've even seen 2 or 3 other pictures from the new book that I thought were really nice too. So I know you guys in the past have ragged on some of the Photoshop kind of crap they've been pushing out, but I think there's a coming back of quality of some sorts.
It's
To
certainly
some
not
degree.
as dismal as the stuff that was in the Dark Angels Codex.
I think
That's
that
for
was
sure.
the low point.
But I did see through some YouTube stuff, I saw some there. It certainly has its fair share of not particularly great stuff, but I think there are some actual nice ones. But I don't think I'm in the position to want to fork out $75 to
Is that
get
how much
some information about armies I don't play with.
Yeah.
What about the digital version?
I think it's 50.
That's,
This is for the Curse of the Wulfen, like the first
yeah.
supplement portion. But I think you can also, or at least digitally, I know they have the updated Space Wolf book that includes all the Wulfen and the new Iron Priest, variant and whatnot. And that's probably a little bit cheaper. So I guess you could get some of it that way.
I mean, I do think it's exciting that while perhaps not advancing the story, they're doing something different.
Yeah,
I feel they're at least sort of advancing the story.
I think the Dark Angels are somehow involved in heretics and stuff, which might be
the Grey Knights are too.
But I mean, it sort of makes sense.
Yeah, no. So I would like to read the stuff at some point, but I'm not really in the position to spend that money to do it. So I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. I guess the other main thing that we could talk a little bit about, like maybe not last weekend, but perhaps the weekend prior, was the Horus Heresy Weekender, and there
I always love those.
Yeah, they revealed a whole bunch of new units and just different models and stuff that I thought we could talk about a little bit.
I guess in relationship to the Space Wolves, something everyone wanted to see was finally shown.
Yeah, now they're
Russ
actually
is being made, and he's being made by Simon Egan. Hooray!
Yeah, no, I was pretty relieved to see that it's Egan, because I feel he's hands down their best sculptor, and admittedly he's made most of the Primarchs, but I think all the ones he has done are better than the other 2 or 3 that were done, and they're still just work in progress images, but it's looking like he's going to be everything people hope to be.
Yeah, I like him a lot.
Bulky runic sort of armor, and in a sort of sprinting pose reminiscent to Angron, but not the thin gladiatorial armor, but more straight up power armor. So
Marine
I think that's pretty exciting. And I guess sort of building onto that, they're releasing him to sort of go along with one of the newer books focusing on the Space Wolves and the Thousand Suns with Prospero, the battle when I guess the Thousand Suns were lost and sucked into the Eye of Terror, or maybe they even created maybe that's when the Eye of Terror was created.
No, the Eye of Terror was around.
Hmm.
Well, how did the Maelstrom happen? How was that created?
Oh, maybe that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. You're right. The Eye of Terror is there for a while. But regardless, so yeah, they're doing stuff with Prospero, and it looks like, at least from kind of some talk about what would be in the book, in addition to the Space Wolves and the Thousand Suns, they're also going to do something with the Sisters of Silence, which is pretty neat. And I think I'm particularly excited. It looks like they're gonna make some models and have some rules for the Spire Guard. So
yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how they end up looking.
Tell me about these Spire Guard.
They're just sort of the royal guard for the planet themselves, and they played a fairly large part in the battle there.
Yeah, they did a lot of dying.
It's true. But yeah, and Graham McNeil's Thousand Sons, there was a lot of talk about them and whatnot. So it's kind of neat to see just that whole battle being explored and not solely from the Space Marine aspect of it.
Yeah, no, that's good.
I guess for other models that were revealed throughout the time, there's a whole bunch of sort of Mechanicum stuff. And in particular, they actually released some images of a new Night Titan, which looks pretty neat. Yeah, it looks as though he's sort of to look like another one of the old sort of epic designs, which is, and he's actually, the scale of it is actually kind of in between the plastic Night Titan and Forge World's resin ones, which is kind of neat. And he's a lot like bulkier and more beetle-like, and he seems to be armed with what kind of looks like little twin-link turbolaser batteries, but I think there's some las cannon variant. I saw some of the rules for it, but
it looks much more like a little mini Warhound Titan because it has little back-mounted missile launcher and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I like it.
Yeah, no, I like the look of it. It's pretty. It's interesting looking, and I don't know. It's neat just to see them Forge World kind of working with the plastic Night Titan, which is a great model, and just to add more variety to that rather than strictly just making their overly expensive larger knights.
Well, he's gonna probably be the same price, I would think.
Yeah, you're probably right.
It's gonna be expensive.
I assume when you buy it, it'll come with all the knight stuff. So the knights, just the plastic one's 150. So yeah, it'll be really expensive.
Cool. I like it. Also, semi-related to that, it looks like for the Adeptus Mechanicus, looks like they're actually releasing some new heads and arms and weapon variants that can go along with their the plastic Secutarii Rangers and Vanguard. So I think this is a great opportunity that they're actually trying to explore now.
Yeah, and it seems at first I thought they were just new Secutarii, but it looks like they're Securitarii. So I guess it's another kind of faction within the Mechanicum, perhaps based around, I don't know, security stuff, or perhaps guarding, working with the Titans, or I don't know. I'd not seen the terminology before, but yeah, I think it's exciting. And their helmet's actually a little bit different. They're pretty similar to the Vanguard, but they kind of have this neat little crest. So yeah, it's just neat to see them do more with those great Secutarii models, because I feel they are some of the best models in recent memory from Games Workshop, and them being able to just add more options. They're already have become a huge boon to the Inquisitor 28 community for just more moderately sized models
and trench coats.
Yeah,
you can finally get trench coats pretty easily. Great all around.
Yeah, no, so it's all pretty exciting. I guess that this largely brings us to the end of the new models and such that have been revealed. And yes, this is probably as good as time as any to sort of segue into talking about the main features of the episode. Although before getting into the main feature, which I think is going to be largely talking about Frostgrave, I actually took some time to review the rules and such, and be able to talk a little bit about that. And since Brad, you've played it, but,
Yeah, I've played the game,
which is good. But yeah, quite a little bit before we get to that, I wanted to finish up some things we had been talking about in the last podcast, which was about Mantic Games' new Kickstarter for the Walking Dead All Out War. We had been talking then, it was a few days before the Kickstarter would have actually started, so we were a little bit lacking in some of like the information and details. So now that the Kickstarter is well on its way, I thought we could talk a little bit about it, and then before we just sort of move on to
revisit it and see if they've improved upon some of our reservations with the Kickstarter.
Yeah, and
I guess we'll break the secret right now. I don't think they did.
I feel, unfortunately, all the things I was somewhat concerned about with Mantic doing another Kickstarter, I don't really think.
I think it's worse.
Yeah, I kind of do too. Like, we had mentioned last time that the main pledge option was going to be this really expensive $125 pledge option, and it's clear that it is actually the only pledge option. So
yes, I mean, right when you click on the Kickstarter, you're greeted with a couple things. One, they didn't think it was needed, or they didn't want to spend the time to even make a video to explain the game to the viewers. There's just a single picture. And then on top of that, there was only one pledge option. Well, actually, no, it's changed. I think it's changed. They now have, they've changed it. There are now so they have a whole bunch of pledges now. So they've changed this actually since I last looked. But initially there was a single pledge for $125. And I don't know.
So that's nice that they changed that, because $125, like, admittedly, it includes the base game and an expansion, as well as like all the other Kickstarter exclusive and unlocked stuff. But like, curiously, that one expansion they were going to give you, the Atlanta camp expansion, like, it wasn't even all unlocked at the beginning of the Kickstarter. Like, to get all the content in the expansion that you were paying for, you had to hope that the Kickstarter would
pledge to unlock it
goals, which admittedly they skyrocketed past that. And I don't know, maybe they had always intended to add the additional pledges later, but it seems a little bit disingenuous. Like, put this really expensive pledge right at the beginning, so all the people that were kind of excited would jump on it, and then later add the pledges you would actually want.
I'm also kind of concerned, having experienced this to some degree with like the X-Wing game, how like they're going to be selling like equipment cards and stuff with like the miniatures, such that you'll probably, if you cared to play, you'd probably be buying characters just to get cards. That is something I'm not always thrilled about doing for X-Wing.
I agree. One thing that I think is nice, I mean, it wasn't available like within the first week of it, but it's there now. They did put up some free play test rules. So, I mean, that's good. Admittedly, I haven't had the time to look over it, or I don't know, maybe that's not quite right. I didn't have the desire to look over.
Actually, before we get too on to like praising them for going back and adding more things, it is interesting to look like they added 2 more cheaper pledges. One's just like an early bird special to get the $125 thing, so that they're already gone. The 1,000 backers that could get them, they're gone. And then the $75 pledge to get the retail version of the game, and a couple other things, that is limited to 1,000. So that's actually not that great. So I guess they're trying to quick everyone. They're trying to presumably get new backers to come in at this cheaper level.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not too
that great. And I was a little bit turned off also to see like the game mat they are giving is like just a paper mat, which I mean I guess they said you don't use a mat. But like I feel that Dead Zone, their Dead Zone, one of the nicest things, like practically the nicest thing in the whole box was the mat they gave you. Like it was nice. Like it immediately, even if you didn't do much with terrain or didn't paint it or anything, it immediately gave this sense that you were there. You're in this war-torn city, and
well, now you have paper.
Yeah, it's just a little bit.
Oh, I'm pretty certain if I from the beginning when I read a little bit about this, the reason they're not including that is because it's expensive to ship. But they are, however, making nicer versions of the mat that you can buy. You can add some more money to get.
Wow, okay. Do you have to pay for shipping? Does anyone know?
I'm pretty sure you do.
Yeah, so that... Yeah, you do. Or maybe it's just for... Oh, yeah, the United States is $20. So, yeah, that's... Yeah,
so,
that's just a bit up.
It's not... They didn't paint a good picture with the whole thing.
Although, I guess, to be honest, like, despite all those sort of reservations, I feel if the game came with, like, a lot... I mean, not even necessarily a lot, but if the models that were in it were really cool, I would probably be inclined to... go in for it, because, in general, Mantic games, the actual games themselves are pretty enjoyable.
Pretty good.
Just the production values tend to be a bit questionable. But, like, in this case, I feel the models do not look very good.
No.
They have sort of a caricatured look to them. Big heads, like, short legs, weird attachment of legs, weird poses.
Some of them are really bad.
And, like, because the thing was, like, I feel some of the earlier Mantic models looked a little bit questionable, but as they start to shift towards doing, like, all digital sculpting, like with Dead Zone and whatnot, I thought, like, there was a dramatic shift towards, like, just the stuff looking pretty nice. But this, I'm pretty sure, is still digitally sculpted, but I don't know. I'm not too excited about them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel it's just one more reason why.
Also, if you look at the Kickstarter page, towards the bottom, they're showing like some of the more recent unlocks. Was Running Man Glenn, a model of him, and he looks really awful. His left arm, it looks like his arm was cut off and they found an arm laying somewhere and just like tacked it on.
Maybe a zombie arm. Right. Maybe in the comics, Brad, can you spoil anything?
No, he doesn't. Get a zombie arm? He does not get a zombie arm.
Okay.
I think the worst.
But like, it's nice to know they say plus a lot more still to come. There's a lot more still come. But I guess the only way for that to come is if they can convince newer backers to come in, and hence their new limited pledge options.
Yeah.
What were you saying, Brad?
I was going to say, I think the worst model is probably Tyrese.
He looks awful. He looks really bad.
Well, I don't know.
Let's not dwell on this much.
Yeah, I would say let's move on past Mantic games, Walking Dead, and talk.
It's probably going to be a fun game, but I feel if you'd really want it, it's probably more advisable to wait until the retail release.
Yeah. Well,
or use the rules that they let you download for free and use all your Zombicide models and miniatures to play it.
Yeah, that's true. Well, so let's move on and talk a little bit about Frostgrave. So admittedly, I haven't played any games of it yet, but I was able to get a copy of the rule book and read through it. And one thing it's particularly nice about it, like you can just get the rule book on like through I think Amazon storefront. I got it actually from Google Play's like book sort of distribution thing for I don't know $12 or something, and had it instantly and was able to go through the rules. But even the printed book is only like $25, and it seems to be pretty well printed. So that's kind of nice. There isn't much of an entry price to it, and they seem to be pretty set on just allowing you to use kind of fantasy miniatures you might already have. But
yeah, that's definitely one of the main reasons to consider playing it is if you already have a ton of stuff that's collecting dust that you're not using because for whatever reason that this is
Sigmar doesn't float your boat.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, because like I feel like if you had played Mordheim or something, like you'd have tons of models, or just any sort of Warhammer army, you'd probably have models. And kind of looking through the rules and reading them, like I feel I could use some of the Age of Sigmar stuff I have. A lot of my Malifaux models I think would be suitable. Like so, I feel there's a lot of opportunity to just get or use models you're excited about to just push them around and try something new without having to spend too much money. So I think that is pretty nice, and I think is clearly a big draw. But additionally to that, the rule set itself is just pretty brief, short, and simple, which is, I think, I don't know, I guess a strength and somewhat of a shortcoming too. Yeah. I mean, it was clearly very intentional, but I think it will make it very easy to sort of get up and going without a huge amount of questions or whatnot. But it also loses some of like the interest in character because of it. But
yeah, do they have their own like world and setting in the game?
They do.
One? Okay.
They do, yeah, but I would say most people, decide to make their own thing. Like, I know that there's a lot of people who like just decide to make it in a desert setting because they think that's cooler than a snow place.
It's like super brief. Like there was some City of Magic, some cataclysm caused a blizzard to start there, and it was covered for, I don't know, 30 years, 100 years or something. And now it's started to abate a little bit, so people are going in there to loot it, and there are monsters in there and stuff.
They're going to be their grave amidst the frost and ice.
Yeah, so it's and like it's very brief in that narrative sort of stuff, which I think is sort of Brad suggested, is kind of designed to get you to come up with your own stuff, but kind of going around with a generic setting. It also gets to like all the weapons, all the sort of additional war characters for your warband are all incredibly generic.
Yeah, they're not exciting enough.
Warrior, archer, crossbowman, barbarian, like it is the most generic thing. And the weapons, which it gets back to just being very simple. Like there's like sword, there's bow, there's crossbow, double-handed weapon, like spear. Like it is very, very generic.
And most of the magical weapons, all they do is like help increase your die roll better. Roll. Yeah, there's nothing cool like a Vorpal blade that like
go snicker snack.
Yeah, like whatever that would be, but they don't got any of that.
No, yeah. So there's no like interest there. Like it's not like Malifaux where every single unit has its own is interesting and has its own sort of interesting weapons and abilities. Like it's not that at all. But I guess the only thing I can sort of counter that with, there are a lot of spells in the book. Like that's the interesting thing that I'm not sure how many wizard classes are, maybe like 10 classes. from like the classic stuff like necromancers and
elementalists
or whatever, like that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Then there are some other more interesting ones. There's sort of like a time mage, which I don't quite recall what they call them, but
Chronomancer, I think.
Yeah, there's some slightly more interesting ones, but what the most interesting thing is just there's like 75 or 80 spells in the game, sort of separated into the different classes of wizards, and I think that is where most of like the effort went into the game, and is what sets it apart. Is there are all these spells, and it's really focused around you doing stuff with your wizard and the apprentice that is very similar.
Well, what happens if your wizard's killed in the first shot and roll of the game?
You're screwed. You're done. Like just. I'm serious. I mean, that's problem with the game. Like
yeah. So I guess that
you can't play a campaign and have your wizard die early. You just can't. Like
yeah. So I think to me.
Well, I mean, to be fair, he won't die. Like, you know, they have a chart at the end of the game.
Yeah,
but you're not going to, if he dies and he gets removed, you're not going to gain any experience. Like, you're not going to be able to do anything. Like, you're just kind of screwed. And to kind of go back to the spells, I think one of my biggest complaints, like, sure, there's a ton of spells in the game, but like, you're a starting wizard, you learn 8 of them. And the games I played, my opponent only casted 2 different ones, and I only casted 2 different ones. So,
like probably damage spells.
Yeah, the damage spells like that. That's what. And to be fair, maybe we're playing it quote unquote wrong. But
so that's true. Like one thing, like so, like a lot of the rules are really simple. Like we said, like there aren't that many. Like there aren't different types of warriors that much. Like they're all kind of the same. Their weapons are the same, but there still are lots of spells, and like they force you to like choose spells from kind of most of the different classes, but nowhere in the book do they like give you sample warbands or something. And I think that would have been really, really helpful to give you like a sense, like maybe just say like, okay, here are 4 sample warbands, like here's some that we think are balanced and good to start with, because it would be really nice to see like what was sort of their intent in like, you have a couple damage spells, have some buff spells, like what would be good? Because for me, I read the rules; they were pretty simple, like quick to get through. But when I had done all that, like I had no idea what I should try to include. Like, should I have a lot of archers?
Yeah.
Should I have a mix? Are certain ones better to support this or that? Like I had no idea, and I think that is kind of hard to actually start, and I would have liked to just have say like, hey, this is a good starting warband for a necromancer, this is a good for this one, and just at least have a start for that. You could be like, you know what, I don't like that spell, or I would rather have more crossbowmen or something. You could make some changes, but to have something, I think would have helped sort of learn, and maybe even because playing a couple games with something that was largely balanced, I think would have been a nice way to get a sense of the rules, get a sense of what you should be doing, and how you can like accomplish your objectives and stuff in the game before it just degrades into like, well, I got this damage spell because I think it's the best, and we're going to all cast like fireball at each other until the game's over.
Yeah, and that's kind of what it turned into.
But I think so. Having said all that, I think you should say a little bit about kind of how the combat goes in it. And this is also pretty simple, and it basically just uses a D20. It's a D20 system, and it's sort of like an opposed system in which if you're shooting or you're using a spell or attacking in close combat, you essentially roll a 20-sided dice. Your opponent opposes you and rolls a 20-sided dice. And if it's like close combat, both of you add your fight statistic to that roll, and maybe a bonus if you had a special sword or whatever. And whoever wins that roll causes a hit. And I think that's a fine system, like similar to Malifaux, how you do have these opposed flips of your fate deck and such. But in sort of a curious choice, and I guess it was one just to streamline and make it quick and brutal, maybe. But like you only roll the die once, in that you roll off each of you, and then if like you're as the attacker or you're shooting your bow or whatever, and you roll, they roll, you add your shoot value, they add their fight value for defending, and if the shooter wins that roll, they just hit and damage goes through based on whatever your roll is. So you don't roll like, oh, you hit, now roll again to cause damage. It's just that
So wait a minute.
roll.
So essentially that means if you both roll really well, like say you both roll a 20, and the defending player, for instance, say he rolled a 20 and that armor value wasn't good enough to fend off the 20 roll of the attacker's attack, that means the defender's damaged, and he's probably like critically damaged because the other
So the way it works is if you won the roll, you just take that roll with whatever bonuses you had, and that's just the damage that was caused. But you subtract from that the armor value of like the defending player, which I think like the Wizards or something have like 10 or 12 or something.
It's funny you mention that, Adam, because that has happened to me 3 times as a defender. And it is not a pleasant experience to...
Yeah, because I think, and there's even, it's an optional rule, but there's an
critical
optional
damage
rule for critical damage, which I think if you roll a 20, it like doubles your damage, which would be really disheartening if the attacker rolls that coveted 20. The defender also rolls it, but like their
there's no critical saves.
Like their bonus was plus something.
So it doesn't matter at all what the defender rolls.
Yeah, not if he doesn't win. The defender only cares about winning, and then if he doesn't, well,
and
shit out of luck.
To me, I think what is most what could be sort of a negative player experience for people using this system is that, let's say you do both roll really well, but the attacker just wins because they rolled a 18, you rolled a 17 or whatever, and the defender loses. That in itself isn't too bad. If the defender then has to roll again and then they roll a 20, then like you're just like, oh, he got lucky. But having no way to reward the defender for rolling well is a curious system, and I think a good way to sort of think about this is if you look at the system for Malifaux, it is a very similar thing in which if you're attacking, both of you will flip a card from like a standard deck of cards and compare those values. But in that, if the defender, like let's say, loses by 1 point, so they still lost, but they're rewarded for basically defending so well, in that there are a bunch of negative modifiers added to the attacker for when they flip again to see how much damage they cause. And so I think I like that system because it rewards the defender for, getting a good roll, or in their case, since Malifaux, you have this cheating system in which you can use extra cards you have in your hand to like change your flip and whatnot. So you have a lot of control and agency over what you're doing, which I think removes a lot of this sort of feel bad based on your luck, because you have some influence over that. Whereas I think I could very easily see in Frostgrave at times it to go like you just feel, oh, I didn't quite beat that. Like, okay, he caused 20 damage to me. My character's dead. But, I guess maybe a lot of times that isn't going to happen so perfectly and being horrible. But I still think it's yeah, maybe it's just streamlined a little bit too much, and just if there was once you hit, you roll again or something, I think would make it such that I think to me it seems like it would have been a little bit better. But I guess until I actually play some games, I'll sort of reserve judgment a little bit there. But
it's happened to you how many times, Brad?
There's been 3 20v20s. So you think like it, and we've played 3 games, so we're averaging about once a game. I mean, you're rolling a lot, so I guess like the odds are, who knows? Somebody with smart math could figure it out. Yeah, it's happened a fair amount. You ready for my next gripe about Frostgrave?
I'm ready.
So the thugs, the non-wizards, they're just so unimportant and uninspired, and it's it's really unfortunate. Like I feel like in other sort of skirmish type games, there's like a leveling up system for your group and not just your leader, but not in Frostgrave. Your guys just kind of continue on just being what they are.
Your wizards can get better,
and your
apprentices get better,
but
as a reflection of the wizards.
Yeah, the apprentice is a little bit of they don't get their own personality; they just inherit what the wizard gets.
I'm pretty sure you have your wizard, which their skills can increase and such, and your apprentice is just like your wizard with like his stats like -2 for all of his stats, something to that effect.
Yeah, so and for everybody who wants to play Frostgrave out there, I know the rules don't say that an apprentice is mandatory, but an apprentice is mandatory.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think that clearly the rules were supposed to be quick, like pick up and play and sort of enjoy it, and I think add sort of your own narrative. And I think it will be strongest if you do not try to game the system, and like try to like sort of do some role playing with it.
Also, I guess this brings up an important question, Brad.
Not just fireballs.
If you were given the choice to play Age of Sigmar and Frostgrave, both of which have pretty short rule sets, which would you choose?
Wow.
Or would you just like to play both of them?
I love all of my games equally, I guess. It really kind of, I feel like, I feel like I should maybe give Frostgrave more of a chance. I enjoy Age of Sigmar for what it is. I don't treat it very seriously. I think the problem with Frostgrave was I was really hoping it would scratch an itch for me in far as a campaignish sort of skirmish fantasy sort of thing, and it didn't quite meet my expectations. I mean,
I don't know. I'm still excited to give it a try, and like I would like to play some games. And I guess ultimately my goal is to make kind of a warband and a wizard that's not just classic shoot lightning bolts, and try to explore some of the more nuanced, interesting things. And
I think what's
focus on just sort of winning.
Another very important thing is to probably. The best experience would be probably not to just be playing against one of your friends, because when one of the wizards scales out of power, if that's the only person you're playing, you're not going to have fun.
Which one thing that is interesting, the rules do very clearly suggest like you can have 3 players, 4 players, like the number of players don't really matter. And so I think that could be sort of a fun thing in which like a bunch of you would get together, because the main goal of it isn't even just to kill each other, it's to like collect treasure that they're looting from this city. So
you're looting the treasure hoard.
So in that sense, I think if you do sort of focus on that and don't just like the goal is to just slaughter all, like that could probably make for a more fun time. So I think we're gonna probably try to play it a little bit soon. Like I actually got a blister of some of their miniatures that I kind of want to do a post and compare them scale-wise to some Age of Sigmar and Malifaux stuff, just sort of compare that and give the game a try. But I guess that's for another time. Hopefully we get to do it soon. So it's actually almost approaching an hour, so I think maybe we want to try to quickly move on to talk a little bit about some of the stuff we're doing on the blog before we kind of wrap this up. I guess before quite we get into that, Brad, have you been up to anything?
Oh, not really. I bought some stuff in the attempt to make a Mega Armored War Boss.
That's cool.
It doesn't seem to be going anywhere.
So it's going to be a hard conversion.
Yeah, I'm still on the drawing board for that. I've been working on some flash skits as well. But
okay, well that's good.
Yeah.
I guess for what's happening on Between the Bolter and Me, I think the main thing that we've been working on is adding or building more our sort of warband for this Pilgrym Project that's being hosted by Iron Sleek, looking at kind of the warbands and factions on Terra in the 41st millennium. Particularly, we're working on this sort of radical church called the Church of the Red Athenium. And I guess the main thing that I wanted to at least mention a little bit tonight was one of the particular models we've been working on is actually a tribute to the late Wayne England, which I'm sure most of you have heard last week. Unfortunately, Wayne England passed away, and he did a whole lot of evocative and neat artwork through the years for Warhammer 40,000, particularly in some of the earlier stuff. Like, I guess my first real introduction for his work was in the skirmish game Gorka Morka, so that sort of Mad Max orc game. He had a lot of really great artwork of orcs and their crazy, vicious axes and such, which always really struck a chord with me and kind of showed me that orcs weren't always just jolly idiots and that they were actually vicious and mean.
You know, I feel a lot of his work, they were like pillars in like describing and really showcasing like the grim darkness of like Warhammer 40,000. His stylized skulls and like wicked grinning faces. Like when I think of skulls in Warhammer 40,000, I think of Wayne England's skulls. Those brutally vicious grinning constructs. I just love them.
Yeah, and like I think in particular, probably a lot of people had some of their first introduction to his work in the third edition of the Warhammer 40,000 rulebook, in which he did a lot of sort of pieces that
interesting,
elaborated
like Imperial
on
art.
Yeah, the Imperium, not just like Space Marines and such. In particular, he has just a wonderful piece of artwork that is actually like this weird scribe with this stretched out grin that has this ink quill and is writing on a whole bunch of skulls, and they're all stacked into a wall.
Legendary.
Yeah, really stuck with me like ever since I saw it, and kind of helped paint this grim future of the Warhammer 40,000 universe, other than just like Space Marines being cool and shooting stuff. And so that picture in particular, we were sort of looking over and considering like last week and this week with his unfortunate passing, and things just sort of clicked together, and like we realized, you know what, we need to make a model just sort of in homage to his work. And we had been talking a lot earlier about making a character for the church that would sort of chronicle the church's the death of members in their congregation, and chronicle like the limbs and such and hands and whatnot that are the church
appreciate
cuts
it.
off of their members to venerate the emperor and his suffering. And we realized, you know what, we should try to make this character to be a tribute to Wayne England's work. And so we looked around a little bit for some models and such that we had that we might base this off of. And Adam, what did you find?
Yeah, we eventually stumbled upon one of the early sculpts that Brian Nelson did for Games Workshop, and this, in case, was one of his cool preacher models. And so that was around the introduction of the Sisters of Battle. When they were released, when Jess Goodwin sculpted them, Brian Nelson sculpted a whole slew of interesting preachers and missionaries to go along with them. And I happened to find one of his old preacher models and decided it would be a perfect foundation for that. So I went about removing the original hair of the model and sculpting on some like crazy spiked hair, very reminiscent of some of the hair that you'd see in some of Wayne England's artwork. And on top of that, since he's to be the scribe for the church, he's brandishing one of the skulls that he's going to pen the life history and accomplishments of a recently departed church member. He's holding their skull that he's going to ride upon, and he has his arm removed. He has his one hand removed, and that's replaced with a little bionic scribing pen that he'll use to like ink all of those things on the skull of the nearly departed. And I'm getting pretty close to finishing the model, and there are some work in progress images of the model on Iron Sleet that they were recently posted, so you could go take a look at that. And it was a fun modeling experience, and it really reminded me how much trickier it is to work with Games Workshop's old metal models.
Yeah, now plastic has been quite a blessing.
But yeah, so I'm hoping when people see the model, they'll be reminded of some of the fantastic artwork and the legacy that Wayne England really helped promote and show, and just the gaming community in general, even if it's not just Warhammer and Warhammer 40,000, but like Magic the Gathering and other fantasy-related games, which he was a part of.
Yeah, so I just want to express that his work meant a lot to us, and we're sorry to hear that he passed, and
our
wish
condolences
the best to his family.
Yeah, go out to his family.
Yeah, but I guess that's probably, we can probably wrap up the evening then. Like, there's a few other stuff working with Pilgrim stuff that you can see on the blog and whatnot, but we can talk about that another time, I think.
Yeah.
So I guess with that, does anyone have any last things to say, Brad?
Nope.
Adam?
No, I think we covered a lot of stuff tonight. I'm pretty pleased.
Yeah, well, all right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody, and I guess signing off.
Yep. See you, everyone.
Bye.